Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Marta and today we're going to be reviewing A Darker Shade of Magic by Schwab. So A Darker Shade of Magic is the first book in the A Darker Shade series, which is a series that's quite well known. I have been wanting to read it for a while, but firstly I didn't have the books and then I bought them and then I just couldn't get around to read them. So I got around now and I just read the first book. I am waiting to finish this review to do the second book. And basically, if you have not heard about Schwab, she's an amazing writer. This is the first book that I have read from her and I do want to keep reading more because I agree with what everyone says. Basically, if you don't know what this is about, it's a world where there's parallel worlds. So basically, there's different Londons that are, I imagine them like one on top of another. That's at least how it's described. And we have our main character, Kel, who has the ability to travel between these worlds. Now, all the worlds have a city that's named London, so he travels between different versions of London, even though that's just a linguistic anomaly that they are called London and not all the cities are the same. Basically, we follow Kel and Lila in this story through the Londons, and I am not gonna speak a lot about that because it will go into spoilers. So if you have not read the book, please go read the book and then come back, because if not, you're gonna be spoiled. So now onto the spoilery section. The first thing that I wanted to start with was the world building, because I actually think that the world building was actually done quite well, especially because it didn't feel like, oh, info dump, even though there was a lot of information that they were giving us. We are starting with Kel, and basically the first thing that we note about Kel and that they tell us, well, Schwab tells us, is that he has a code that has like many different sides. I think he says that he has discovered like 6 or 7, but like once he opened a code and never found it again. He uses certain codes for different things. In Red London he uses the red code, and Grey London he tends to use the black one. And I actually thought that was quite interesting, like the fact that we start with that code. One, already puts us into the magic world. Secondly, it explains a bit of how like magic works, because like obviously normal codes only have 2 sides, the inside and the outside. And it also tells us that our main character is magical because he owns that code and he knows how to work it. So Kel puts on the code and we have a description of the code. And basically Kel walks and talks to King George, and you can see the difference between his magic point of view and like Grey's London non-magical point of view, and that's how we are introduced to the world with that stark contrast. We do not start in Red London, which has magic, which I think is very smart, because basically she can tell us what Kel does, which is basically being a messenger. Like his main job is to be a messenger between the crowns of the different Londons. It also tells us what kind of year we are in. So we know that George III, and he's already being demented, so that's the Regency period. We then learn that they're in 1818, so basically the end of George III's reign. We also learn about the coins and how Kel travels, just because when he finishes talking with the king, then he uses his magic to travel over to see King George's son. Kel then travels over to see George's son, which is the King Regent, I think it is in English, and basically George IV. And I love how Kel notes, this is a very weird common thing that Grey London has, that the kings will name their sons the same name that they are given, and it's very confusing, which I completely agree with. It's kind of confusing. We have that in Spain as well, and like we have like a million Felipes, so yeah, I agreed with Kel in that. And she also introduces us to the coins, which are lins, and the world building is done gradually, though it is explained as Kel travels and moves through the world. It is not like when I did my review of Crescent City, like a sentence info dump, a sentence info dump. I didn't feel like I was being dumped with information. I think I grasped the world quite quickly. So I think it was a very good way of building the world. On top of that, we also have someone that comes from Grey London. Like our other main character is Lila Bard, or Delilah Bard, and she's a thief from Grey London, and she ends up traveling to Red London with Kel. So we see the point of view from a non-magical person, and because of the questions that she asks, we discover more about us, that world, and it's another point of view to give us more information and a bit more of world building. I think it was very smartly done, and it's good to read a book that builds the world in a smart way. So another thing that I really enjoyed about this book was the magic system and how the magic system worked, because it was unlike anything that I have ever seen before. And I do not mean the elemental magic, because obviously we have seen, or at least I have seen, elemental magic everywhere. Like, that's the most like kind of basic form of magic that everyone goes to. Especially now, I have just finished watching Avatar: The Last Airbender and that's elemental magic, but I loved how this magic from A Darker Shade of Magic is completely different. Basically, we have 5 elements: water, air, earth, fire, and bone. And it's really interesting because if you can control bone, you can physically control other people, because you can like move their limbs and stuff, because you can control their bones in their body. And not everyone has a connection with magic. Even if you're born in Red London, for example, the Prince Rai, which, side note, I kept wanting to call him Rysand or Riz, because I finished reading Aquatar not that long ago, and like, it's spelled, Rai is spelled R-H-Y, and when I read like R-H-Y and then apostrophe S for like Rice book or Rice whatever, I just kept wanting to call him Riz, and I was like, no, this is a different person. So yeah. It was confusing at times, but that's just like my personal situation, especially because I had just like read Aquatar not that long ago. So basically, Rai, even though he's the prince and he's royalty, he doesn't have a lot of magic. We learned that he has problem controlling most of the elements apart from fire, and like, even though he has more of a connection with fire, he is not fully controlling of that, and like, he's still learning even though he's 20 years old. We have beings that are more powerful and less powerful, and the most powerful beings are the Antari. They have a deeper connection with magic. They are the only ones who are allowed to travel between the different Londons. They are the only ones who can use the Antari magic, which has its own language, and you have to talk to that magic. Basically, Kel describes that the only way to make magic work, at least Antari magic, is to talk to it. And basically, I found it really interesting, like the language is always like as something. So as travars is to travel, as ansea, I think it is to dispel. So there's like different kinds of magic. He says that blood magic is like the most powerful magic, so that's why he has to cut himself every time that he has to travel. Even though he's connected with magic, he needs to like hurt himself to do magic, and it takes a toll on him. And when he travels between worlds, he says that he's always very tired after that because it takes a big toll. So yeah, I really enjoyed that magic system. It was really nice to read a magic system that was different, and even though this was fantasy, there were no like weird creatures or anything. Everyone was just human. Either you can do magic or you can't. Something which I found really interesting and which I really enjoyed as well was the historical period that we are in, because I wasn't expecting to be thrust into the Regency era, especially because I haven't read that much literature where we are in the Regency era. Most of the literature that I have read was either written during the Victorian period, so obviously it takes place in the Victorian period, and other literature that I have read from the 20th and 21st century, normally either they take place in the present, some of them take place in the future, and some of them, like most of the fantasy novels that I read, take place in like what we would consider the medieval era, but it's not really medieval because it had like some modernizations. It's more of like medieval vibe, that I would say. So it was interesting to visit a period that I haven't visited much, especially because I really enjoy 19th century England and I want to learn more about it. But there's something which made me a bit angry, because basically I'm not no expert in this, but Lila says that she doesn't want to wear corsets because they are cinched corsets and abundant skirts. Basically that's why she dresses as a man. So for me this basically covers women's clothes as being quite constrictive. Now, as I said, I am not expert in clothing, but I do really like to investigate about period clothing. I really like sewing as well. At some point I want to make myself a Victorian gown, especially I would like to recreate one of Tessa's dresses. So as I say, I am no expert, but I have done a bit of investigation, and if you want to learn more about Victorian clothing, Regency clothing, and like basically any type of like period clothing, go see Bernadette Banner's channel and Karolina Cybrowska's channel. I probably completely butchered her name, I'm really sorry, I do not speak Polish, but they have studied this and they know what they're talking about, so I really love their channels. But basically what I want to go into this is that firstly, corsets aren't constrictive, and especially in 1818 specifically, they aren't cinched. The fashion of the era basically consisted of empire waistlines, so they went like literally under your breast, so you didn't need a cinched waist, you didn't need to like pull it in and tuck it in, because your dress would not continue that shape. You wouldn't see that shape through the dress itself, because the dress would just like go straight down from underneath the breast. I will input some pictures anywhere. If you have seen the movie Emma, you know what I'm talking about. Apparently those costumes are really, really good. Secondly, we have to learn the difference between corsets and stays. This is the time period where corsets and stays existed parallel to each other. You could either wear one or the other one, and stays were considered to be a lot more constrictive and cinched than corsets, especially because some of them would have like a wooden plank down the middle. Some corsets did have that as well, but not, I don't think, if I am correct, they wouldn't have boning, or they wouldn't have had boning yet. Most of them were just made of cottons and fabrics. Especially if we go into 1818, I have learned that corsets were mostly like a modern bralette. They were just half a corset, they would stop under your bust and they would just basically hold your boobs up. So saying that the corsets are cinched are like saying that a modern day bra or bralette is cinched, and it was just the underwear that they would wear at the time. It's like, yes, if you don't want to wear a bra now, that's completely okay, but it wasn't supposed to be uncomfortable. Actually, most women found it more comfortable than the very uncomfortable stays from the previous century. So I did find it quite annoying, because I did know that at the start of the century corsets were not especially cinched. And I think that even if you do like a little bit of research about this, you can find it. Like, it literally took me, what, 10 minutes to find more about how corsets worked, and also about the skirts. They didn't wear abundant skirts until I think probably the middle of the century. Like, if you're not gonna have a big skirt, like abundant skirts, in my head, if I think of abundant skirts, I think of a Victorian like full skirt with like the shift and the crinoline and the petticoat and then the dress on top, and then you have your jacket and everything. Like, I think about something big, and they didn't wear this. As I said, the dresses were very much pretty straight, so they would wear a shift, their corset, maybe a petticoat, and then they would wear their dress. Yes, that's like 2 layers of skirts or 3 layers of skirts, but they weren't wearing any underwear. So basically a shift worked as your whole underwear, and it prevented your clothes from basically smelling later on. And I am not sure, but I think that men wore undershirts as well, so they would wear the undershirt and then a shirt on top and then however many layers. I dress with more layers for the winter. Like, I wear a pair of trousers, another pair of trousers, a t-shirt, my underwear obviously, probably another t-shirt if it's very cold, a jumper, a coat, a hat, scarves and gloves. So I think it was a bit exaggerated, especially if we are in the Regency period. If we had been in the Victorian period, I would have understood the cinched corsets and the abundant skirts, because yes, corsets were not constrictive, but they were cinched. They were supposed to like shape and mimic the shape of your waist, and some of them even had like padding. You would have to like fill in your corset. So this is something that annoyed me a little bit, because lately I have been very obsessed with period clothing. I am reading quite a lot about it, and as I said, I do want to start constructing my own gowns. So whenever I actually can afford it. But yeah, please, if you're gonna write about period clothing or you're gonna say something about women's period clothing, do a bit of research, especially because there's a lot of misconceptions going around. Something which I really did enjoy is the writing style. I think Schwab has a very nice writing style, especially the fact that she writes in short chapters. This made me really happy for two reasons. The first reason is that most of the books that I read tend to have longer chapters, especially if you're reading fantasy. Fantasy books tend to have like 10-20 page chapters, and I am quite a slow reader, so sometimes I just have to leave the book in the middle of a chapter, which I don't really enjoy because then I'm very confused as to what's going on. So short chapters I really enjoy. And also there's the fact that I myself write in short chapters. I am working on a book and that book is written in very short chapters, like they're just like 2,000 words long, 1,500 words long. They're very short, like 3-4 pages. So that having said, I thought it was very smart as well to have a lot of viewpoints, because basically when we follow just one character or we narrate the story from just one character's point of view, we only have the knowledge that that specific character has. So basically the way that the author chooses to show you each viewpoint will affect the amount of knowledge that you have on the story. That is why I think it was important to have Lila Bart in there, because it affects the way that the world is built, and like the information that we get from her is completely different from the information that we get from Kel. But there's also characters that we get maybe like 1 or 2 chapters from. So for example, we get like 2 chapters from the guard's point of view. I think it's Parish and Gab, maybe. So we get 2 chapters from their point of view, we get a chapter from Baron's point of view, and we get, I think it was 1 chapter from Fletcher? The contraband shopkeeper where Kel gets the white rook. And basically getting those chapters from those points of view give us essential information that then play into our surprise factor of the novel. For example, we know that Baron is dead before Lila and Kel know that Baron is dead, so we see their reaction and their surprise reaction and Lila's hurt reaction that Baron is dead from a place of already knowing. So we can concentrate more on their reaction and how the characters move from that and how that affects them, more than thinking on how that affects us and being shocked that Baron is dead, because we have already gone over that shock a couple of chapters ago. Moreover, we also get that chapter where Holland gives Rye the necklace. We don't know what he's given Rye, we just know that Holland goes into Rye's room. Now, by this point, we don't know that Holland is evil, so I didn't think much about it. I just thought that it was suspicious, that the guards were suspicious, but like they completely forget what's going on. So we already see that Antari magic, because we do know that Holland is another Antari. We do see that Antari magic has the power of erasing someone's memories. But by the time that this came to play, I had completely forgotten that Holland had visited Rye. So I think it also plays on our mind that it's also at the start, because maybe you have it in the back of your mind, but it's not until it happens that you remember. And we see the necklace that Rye is wearing and we're like, oh right, so that's what Holland came to do, and we learn that Astrid is controlling him. We also have that point of view with Fletcher. I'm gonna call him Fletcher. Wait, what's his name? Let's see if I can find his name. Yes, his name is Fletcher. Okay, I remembered his name correctly. So yeah, we have that point of view with Fletcher, basically, where he is in his shop. He tells us what his shop has, so we learn that he's also someone that deals in contraband. He buys contraband and he sells contraband. And basically we learn that he lost a card game to Kel, and that's how Kel won his coat, which I thought was really interesting, that he won it in a card game, though not surprising. And he won it by cheating. We learn a magical way of cheating. We learn a magical game of cards. And basically Kel gave Fletcher a single white chess rook. to remember him by, and as a token of like, ha, I won against you, there you go, you can have this trash. Which Fletcher has saved until now, and that's why Kel wants it, because they need a token to go to White London. And because of that, we know that Fletcher is bitter, so we should not trust him. If we had gone directly to the shop without having that point of view, we would not know who Fletcher is. That would have had to be explained. Then we Kel would have had to explain where he comes from, what he does, that he shouldn't be trusted, whereas in a very short scene we get that information from Fletcher's point of view. So when Fletcher betrays him, it doesn't come as a surprise, because we already know that he could do that he didn't want to really help them. So yeah, I think that was very smart. Now, on the other hand, even though I really like the writing style and I really like the way that the book was constructed, I do have something that annoyed me a little bit, and it's a bit of a pet peeve, and it's basically parentheses. This woman uses parentheses in almost every single chapter, and I found that a bit annoying, mostly because when you're writing and when you're reading, you can probably embed those parentheses into the sentence itself. And if you put a pair of brackets, if you have a sentence and there's something like that, that's automatically gonna cut your reading. So it just completely took me out of the book. I think it made liking the book or going into the book a bit harder, just because I just felt like it kept cutting. I think that either embedding the sentences or even using dashes instead of parentheses would have been better, because a dash just makes your eye continue. It's like a small line, so you continue the line and then you can put whatever information, and their function a lot of the time is very similar to a parenthesis or even a longer comma. It's just a pause to like say something, and then like you can continue from that something. So please do not use parentheses unless it's like very sparingly. Like sparingly it's fine, but I thought there was a bit of an overuse of them. So last but not least, I do want to talk a little bit about the characters. First, I want to talk about Lila Bard, because I think that she is by far my favorite character in this. I think I liked her a little bit more than Kel. She is your typical London thief. She doesn't like women's clothing, she dresses in men's clothing, and she is poor. She wants to be a pirate and she wants to have adventures. Basically, she steals from people and she has had to learn how to live on the street. And I found it really sad that she had to have that life. And I loved it when Kel accepted to like take her on an adventure, because she was finally gonna have her dream. She was probably now gonna have money, or at least like someone that has money to like be with, even though she doesn't like taking things from people. She wants to buy everything herself, and she also wants to have a ship, which the ship that she lives in, she has to burn, because basically the guy that she was paying to like not give her away, because she is a wanted thief but everyone thinks that she's a man, basically tried to rape her, and she has to kill him and burn the ship so that she's not discovered. And she goes to Baron, because she knows Baron for a while. She had been living with him and everything, and they're not exactly friends, but they kind of like care for each other. Baron cares for her as a father would to a daughter, and that's why she's so upset when he dies. And I also like the dynamic that Kel and Lila have. I love her sense of morals, because she doesn't have like a straight sense of morals. She doesn't care about anyone but herself, and she has to have those morals, because if not she wouldn't be able to steal. She needs to fend for herself, she needs to eat, and she needs to live, and she doesn't have anything else but stealing, and that's what she's good at. So she likes fending for herself. She doesn't like anyone's charity. She wants to be able to pay for her things, and basically she has this thing where she has to leave everyone behind. But when Kel actually goes for her, just because she had stolen from him and Holland was behind her, she manages to escape, and then she comes back for him because she feels a sense of, this guy saved me, I now need to save him. And that's how they end up going on an adventure together. I love the fact that Kel's always like, no, you cannot come. What do you think that you're doing? You cannot come, you're just human, you don't have any magic, you don't know how my world works. And she's like, excuse me, I am going with you. I don't care what you say, you're taking me with you, I will like basically hang on to you if I have to, but I am tired of London now that you opened the door to this amazing world with magic. You think that I'm gonna stay here? No. And I love that about her. She's so resilient. She knows her limitations, but she's like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and if I have to die in an adventure, at least I will have died out of London, which is what she wanted basically. On the other hand, we have Kel. Kel is our main character from Red London, and I don't know how I feel about him yet. I do like him. I think I like Lila more strongly. I think that Lila has a stronger sense of character. I think Kel is more lenient in a way. He doesn't have like such strong characteristics around him. Yes, he is a contrabandist and he's a messenger, but like mostly what he does is he intrigues me because we don't know anything about his past. He lost his memories from when he was a young child. He doesn't remember anything before the age of 5. So basically his name even is just like the initials that he has in his arm, because he has a scar there that says KL, and that went from KL to Kel. So basically he feels like he's a possession of the crown. But I do love this conversation that he has with Lila, saying like, I don't belong in the royal family, I am a possession of the royal family, I am an object. And that's how he feels. And Lila's like, at least you have a family, someone to call family, somewhere to call a home, you live in a royal palace, you have money. I don't have any of those things. I have to fend for myself all the time. And that like kind of downs on him, and he's like, yeah, maybe I do have a family. And he starts appreciating them more, because I did find quite annoying that he didn't appreciate them. But I do know how, like I do understand how he feels, because he's like, these are not even my adoptive family, I don't know where I came from. I do like the fact that his sense of morals makes him go back and save Lila, because he feels like Lila is in trouble because of him, even though it wasn't his fault that Lila stole the stone from him. It was his fault. I don't think it was even his fault that he got this stone, because like the woman just like gave it to him and that was it. So basically I like that kind of sense of morals. I also like his character development, how he learns about magic, how in the end he learns that he can actually dispel the stone. So that was quite good. But I think that we have more to see from him. He does have a very strong relationship with Rai, which I really enjoyed. He loves him like a brother. He is quite witty and sarcastic, which I liked, but he takes things a lot like very seriously as well. I think that he's also a bit serious at times. So yeah, I did like him. I just like Lila a bit more, and I am keen to like continue the series and see where the character of Kel takes us. Now lastly, I wanted to mention Holland, because even though he is not like a main character, he's kind of our main villain, even though he's not exactly a villain. Sorry, this is just my notebook. I was really sad when he died. I actually do not know if he's completely dead, because we are led to believe that he is dead. And no one can come back from Black London. So even in the chance that he wasn't dead, he would be trapped in Black London. And we don't know what there is in Black London. So I was really, really sad, because I feel that Holland did not have the best of lives. Like he's a very powerful being. He's also an Antari, but he's essentially being controlled by the king and queen of White London. So basically Ashred and Athos have placed of him a controlling charm, and yes, he has some sort of agency to do what he wants, but all his main actions are controlled by them, and if they want him to do something, he has to do it. So basically the way that Kel thinks about it is like, we are two faces of the same coin, we are both Antari. If Holland had been born in Red London, then his life would have been different, which that's completely right. But then Holland says like, we are not the same person, we are completely different beings, you are not being controlled. So I just think that it's sad that by the end Holland had to die without having been able to like live much. He has always been controlled by these two people, and even though he had the power to be king, he was overthrown by them, because I think he was too kind and he wasn't ruthless enough to actually be king in White London, because the more ruthless you are, the best suited you are for king, because you have to fight for your power in White London. So yeah, overall I was just sad. I think that he deserved better, and that's all my thoughts on the characters. So I think overall I give this book 4.9 stars out of 5. I did really enjoy the book. I thought it was really well written and the world building was done beautifully. I'm very interested in it and I cannot wait to actually read the sequel. Right now I am reading the Red Scrolls of Magic, so that review will come up at some point, but after I finish that I will probably continue with this series. If you have liked this review, please don't forget to give the video a big thumbs up. If you want to see more reviews from me, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you never miss any content. That is all for today. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye!